Layne, thank you so much for the opportunity to chat to you about this really important issue. I know as a seven-time world surfing champion, you have such a focus through your Awake Academy work as well around resilience, overcoming obstacles, determination. You've had your own, fair share of adversity as well. So I'm really keen to hear a bit about the work that you're doing, and I guess bring up this topic of digital resilience, particularly for women and girls as athletes, as business leaders, and as people in the media, because we know that the more high profile and public facing you are, the more online abuse you receive. And one of the things that we're trying to do here is raise awareness around this issue to make sure it's not a barrier to success for young women and for female athletes in particular. So thanks so much for joining us. Do you
Pleasure.
want
Thanks.
to, sorry, jump in? Tell me a bit
No,
about the work you're doing.
no, I just said it's absolutely my pleasure, Yasmin. I look forward to chatting with you too.
Oh, excellent. That's amazing. I want to hear firstly, though, a little bit about the work that you're doing at Awake Academy. I live actually, I didn't tell you this, around the corner. So I'm a Northern Beaches girl myself. So I've seen a little bit of the team, I think at different times down at Freshwater Beach, doing a lot of great sort of environmental work as well, picking up pieces of plastic from the beach, and really finding ways, I guess, to connect to nature and to yourselves. Tell me a bit about what you're doing.
Cool. Well, there's a lot, but I'll shortcut the struggle. So, Awake Academy is a self empowerment platform. It's designed to help people feel more centered, connected, and confident to live a life they love. Most
Mm,
of us have gone through life on default, and we want to help people design how they want to live their lives. A lot of us have been either, look, the word that keeps coming to mind is dictated to, our
mm,
dreams, our aspirations, the way we live our life, the jobs that we choose. It's
mm.
been kind of projected onto us, and we've just attempted to fulfill other people's expectations or ideals around what our perfect lives look like, and we've rarely ever taken the time to define what that looks like for us. So
Mm.
we have an online course called Own Your Truth, which we also facilitate through organizations, and that really helps people boost their energy, develop their EQ, and develop stronger senses of empathy and compassion, because as I often
Mm.
say, we can't give what we don't have. So we need to develop these tools so then we can extend them to others. Unfortunately, majority of women, and I know, tend to put everyone else's happiness ahead of their own. And
Mm.
we need to bring that back to ourselves and be that beacon of light and happiness and joy that we can then extend out to others.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, really important work. Ultimately, putting on the oxygen mask yourself before you
Yes.
can give to others. And you're
Yep.
so right. It's something that as women, we don't do particularly well. We're often, givers to others before ourselves.
Mm.
Speaking about, I guess, losing a bit of our soul and a bit of our spirit, would you include the online world as part of that resiliency mindset? Is that something that you've ever thought much about?
100%. Yeah. It's a really toxic environment. And it can be a really supportive and uplifting environment, but can also be a deeply negative detractor from motivation and self-worth. And it's something that takes a lot of maturity and emotional intelligence to navigate your way through. I've encountered the occasional hostile taunt and threat. Fortunately, I've never really been severely threatened on social media, but I keep coming back to the work that we do in Awake Academy. And there's this part of the course where we talk about define your dream team. And your dream team is literally usually made up of about 5 people, because we become the sum of our top 5 people. And the times that I have encountered that negative feedback or that degrading hostility, I come back to myself and I go, are any of these people in my dream team? Because if they're not in my dream team, it doesn't matter. I mean, if I've upset my dream team, then there's something that I really need to address. But if they're not part of my dream team and they're not really people I know or value, then they're entitled their opinion, but their opinion does not define who I am, nor does their opinion dictate to me how I feel about myself. And I don't allow them to define my self-worth. Takes a
Yeah.
lot of maturity and understanding to get to that point, though.
I was going to say it's such an amazing position to be in when you have that level of self-confidence and self-esteem. And often it comes, with life experience and time and
Yes,
age.
definitely.
But it's
Age,
something that
definitely
age,
age.
you won't say age. You won't say
I'm
21.
happy to be
What?
aged.
No, it's a good thing. I think once you start to get to those points, you realize, obviously stop giving a shit about everyone else. And it's just trying to make yourself happy, I guess. And as you say, the people in your close knit group are the opinions that matter. But
Yes.
certainly, for younger women in particular, they're not quite there yet, and they're really immersed in the world of social media. And I guess, for female athletes in particular, one of the
Mm,
things that I've observed is that it's a really core part of their personal brand and their long-term prospects after sport. We've got male athletes that are making, a lot more money, able to set themselves up for success. And a lot of the time, female athletes are really reliant on, brands and sponsorships, of which social media is a really big part. I wanted to share with you a statistic from Deakin University that I read in a bit of research earlier this year, and it said that cyberbullying of Australia's top athletes, 9 out of 10 elite sportswomen are subjected to or witness gendered online harm levied at them or their peers. Does that
wow,
surprise you? 9 out of 10.
that's horrifying. Yeah,
It's really crazy.
that is crazy.
I think one
Uh,
of the things is the rate, right? The
yeah.
rate at which this is occurring and how many people it's affecting. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, my thoughts are I wish this statistic was made more public
Mm.
because the challenge with social media is it's everyone's highlight reel, and we're all putting on a happy face and showing the best of ourselves, and most of the time it could be doctored and you don't even know if it's real.
Mm.
But to know that 9 out of 10 women are experiencing cyberbullying is distressing and horrifying. Do you know what the stats are with men?
Not off the top of my head, but it'd be dramatically lower, especially when we're talking about female athletes in particular.
Mm,
They're out in the spotlight. Certainly, there'd be some significant abuse against certain male athletes out there, and people with high profiles, but certainly the rates of abuse targeted towards women are
yeah.
much higher. You mentioned, I think, images or AI just earlier, and one that comes off the top of my head around deep fakes is that there is I think it's 96% of deep fakes on the internet at the moment are pornographic in nature.
Oh my goodness.
99% of them depict women
Ugh.
without their consent.
So when we think about deep fakes and pornography and cyberbullying and all of these things, what is it saying about society, Yasmin?
Yeah, it's really, we're reverse interviewing here, Lane, I
Yeah.
think. But I think it says that we're in a tough spot. We need to make some changes, and thus the point of this awareness and advocacy work, because unless you're in those circles or someone, there's a little bit of apathy when it comes to these sorts of issues. And I think one of the problems that I see is that women are silenced, so it's an attempt to silence their voices and censor them in a place that's really important for them to have a right and a voice. And I guess it's really impacting their willingness to step into different positions, whether that be, in the spotlight as an athlete, that they've got to consider how that's going to impact them, whether
Mm,
it's as a business leader. Do I want to take on that CEO role if I know that this is what's coming?
yeah.
And we're certainly starting to see that. But I did want to throw back to you though around that athlete component. You've spoken publicly about your experience as being, one of the most high profile female surfers, and what surfing was like back in the day with some of the, cultural norms and the gendered norms of surfing. If you, for example, could put yourself in a position where you were still competing at that level
Mm,
and you received, a really hateful message right before, a world championship event or a really, important moment for you,
mm.
how do you think a message like that, let's say your safety was threatened or the safety of your family was threatened, how would that impact your peak performance on the day? How would that impact the way that the result, I guess, the outcome is?
Well, it completely derail me mentally, which would then make me feel weak in my body, which ultimately would have a negative impact on my physical performance. Emotionally, it would be incredibly challenging to navigate and negotiate. I would be in a juxtaposition of just ignore it versus it really hurts.
Mm,
And
mm,
navigating that would be there'd be a lot of tension in that moment in time. It'd be really hard. It'd be really, really hard. If I knew then what I know now, I would know, firstly, not to engage with social media right before paddling out for a contest or a heat. And I would also, I would just put boundaries and parameters and protection mechanisms around that whole experience. I mean, this is, I guess it's in the same same subject line, but in a completely different way. I was adopted and I applied for my birth certificate when I was 24 because I'd lost my mother and I just felt really alone and isolated. So I wanted to know where I came from. And when my housemate received my birth certificate and faxed it to me in South Africa, and then the tour manager decided to hand that to me 10 minutes before paddling out for a heat. And I made the stupid decision of reading it, which, as I said earlier, completely derailed me. Now my thoughts are not focused on my performance and my strategy and my heat plan. Now all I'm thinking about is, holy shit, there's my mother's name, my mother's maiden name, my real name when I was born, like all of this information that I'd been yearning and seeking for. And I wasn't strong in myself back then. My self-worth was wrapped up in how I performed and how people related to me and things that was said to me. So it was incredibly distressing. It was a major distraction. And I almost lost that heat until the last 5 minutes. I got my shit together in my head. I went, Layne, come on. You've only got 30 minutes. Like, focus your attention. Let's get this job done. And I was able to rely on my experience and my knowledge and my capacity to perform under pressure. But if I was, a lot younger, a lot more immature, and a lot less equipped, it would have been devastating for my performance. And that's what we're seeing today, which is really distressing and heartbreaking to see athletes having to deal with this kind of thing.
Yeah, it's incredibly hard. And it's just something that I think, thankfully, back in our day, we didn't really have to think too much about it, but it's a front and center issue now for athletes because social media is such a big part of their workplace, I guess.
Absolutely. When I went to the London Olympics back in 2012, we referred to that as the social media games. It was the first time that social media came into play at the Olympics. And I was an athlete liaison officer alongside John Eel, Steve Waugh and Kieran Perkins. And it was our responsibility to motivate and inspire and mentor and support the athletes in all of their endeavours. And I started to engage with social media. And at the time, I think the only platform was Twitter, and that I was on. And I remember posting a photo of what myself and the Olympic team walking into the stadium for the opening ceremony. And yes, I received hundreds of positive comments, but I received one very vicious, nasty comment that basically said, "You CUNT of a thing." And
Wow.
I was like, who are you and why are you saying this to me?
Why are you so angry?
Why are you so angry?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine living with that much vitriol in your heart every day of the year. So, but the funny thing is that I can't really remember any of the positive ones. I just remember that negative one. And that was back in 2012, So what long-lasting impact of these threats and these intimidations and this vitriol that these athletes are now exposed to, what's going to be the long-term implications on their emotional, physical and mental well-being? That's what's not really being addressed or considered when we're dealing with this. We're just saying, oh, you poor thing. But no, what impact is this having long-term? And that's where we're lacking the data and the studies to really support that.
That's such an amazing point, because it is something that we need to think of, I guess, when it comes to the organizations that these athletes are a part of, the federations. I mean, the Olympics is the Olympics. There's safeguarding officers this year at the Paris Olympics. They had AI to address athlete safeguarding. I haven't heard a whole lot about how successful that was. It seems like there was a fair amount of abuse directed at, a couple of situations. We bring up Raygun, we bring up Iman Khalif. There's been some terrible stuff happening there, but there is work being done, I guess, to try and address the online world as part of athletes' well-being. We do need to think beyond their physical world, don't we? We have to
Yes.
start thinking about their psychological safety as well, because as you say, one really negative comment, and that's a toxic comment. All of us have this negativity bias where we're going to just cotton on to that, and it's really hard to let it go. So impacting performance is one thing, but in that situation, what we're also hearing from athletes is, am I safe? Like, is this person, are they going to find their way to me? Are they going to walk, they're going to try and wait for me when I come out of, the Olympic stadium and try and attack me? And this is I guess a reality where people who are potentially a bit unhinged have such access. So there's a lot that I think organizations really need to do to think a bit about how they can protect their athletes in that way. Do you have any ideas around what sort of safeguards should be in place? I mean, education is a really big one that we're being told, is happening in dribs and drabs. But what are your thoughts on what organizations should do to protect athletes?
It's a tough one, because the athletes will do what the athletes want to do, no matter how many safeguards or protection mechanisms are placed around them. If the athlete's self-worth and an identity is wrapped up in their social media presence, then they're going to keep being attracted to that addiction. And that's another toxic avenue that we need to start addressing. I feel that we need to address the cause more so than the symptom. I mean, once defense elicits attack, once you create these safety mechanisms, then people see that as, oh, I've got to break through that and cause more harm and cause more pain, and find a way to prove to them that they can't protect themselves and that they're not safe. And so it's a nature of society, and it's a really distressing thought that there are so many people out there that are 100% invested in harming or hurting others. Really sad state of affairs.
It is.
It's really, so my thought around that is the only way to protect yourself from it is to not engage with it. It's a pretty simple thing. Unfortunately, kids these days are so invested in that profile, and like you mentioned earlier, the apathetic mindset that's being nurtured, developed and created just through scrolling. And that little miniature dopamine hit, bing, I like that, nope, don't like that, don't like that, don't like that. Like, what do we create? Like, what kind of leaders are we creating?
I often think about that too. This is, what's the next generation of leaders of our world going to look like, and what does this digital world look like that we're raising them in? I think, from the work that I do, talking to parents, parents, as far as I'm concerned, are our children's first and most influential role models. What are we teaching them? What attitudes, what behaviors, what's okay? A lot of the time we'll have parents that say, oh, I tell my kids to do this, that, and the other. And then you look at their own social media feeds and they're a little bit questionable in terms of the ways that I guess we would benchmark respectful behavior. So it can be really tricky. I think, when it comes to athletes, having obviously access to mental health support services for organizations, including policy, understanding that the online world is a place these days, not just a platform.
True. Yeah, true. I think I'm obviously being extremely naive when it comes to that. So yes, having these mental health platforms like Beyond Blue and Black Dog Institute and Gotcha for Life and Are You Okay Day, like my objective with Wake Academy, and especially the courses that we produce and the material that we share, is about normalizing conversations around mental health, because 1 in 5 of us are going to experience a mental health injury or a mental health illness within our lives. I want to not only talk to that, but also talk to the other 4. Right. So we work in the preventative space. Let's get you equipped with a toolkit to manage when you're triggered, a toolkit to define who are the people in your life that you need to reach out to, because I'm a silent sufferer, and that is a result of a tough childhood, growing up in a tough love environment. I wasn't allowed to be hurt. I wasn't allowed to share my pains because it made my parents uncomfortable. And as you said, if the parents are role modeling behavior that isn't congruent with what they're saying, kids learn more from what they see than what they're told. If they don't feel safe in sharing their pain, then having these services is one thing, but then they've got to have the courage to reach out and ask for it. And we need to eliminate a lot of the barriers to entry. eliminate a lot of the stigma around mental health and around mental illness, and start promoting the importance of reaching out, speaking out, standing up for what you believe in, and nurturing that growth in our youngest kids. Not waiting until they understand it, is role modeling it, because the minute they see it, then they start to believe it, and we can't be what we can't see.
So well put. I'm such a believer of that as well. If we establish those great foundations, those coping skills, life isn't about having, a free and easy ride. It's about the ability to overcome the challenges and thrive despite them. So I think that's probably the best gift that we can ever give our kids. And
it's true. The challenge that I also see, though, is now we're putting pressure on parents to do more and be more.
Yep.
And that's not where I'm coming from. Where I'm coming is for the parents to be more self-aware, because the amount of parents that I speak to are like, I'm doing this for my kids. And I'm like, well, have you asked your kids whether that's even what they want? I mean, as a parent, your child's pain becomes your pain, and you don't want to see your child in pain. So you'll do everything you can to prevent your child from experiencing pain.
Absolutely.
But then the way that you behave prevents them from being able to address their pain,
exactly,
or sit in their pain, or process their pain. And now they're numbing their pain, and they're watching you numb your pain, whether it's through social media, or whether it's through alcohol or drugs or sex or gymming or numbing any other way. The minute you're numbing, you are deflecting and in denial and suppressing. And then that causes all sorts of problems and issues later on in life. So if we can just create a bit more empathy and understanding and self-awareness in our ability to not only cope, but just to build awareness around how we feel and why we feel that way, and then having the safety to process those feelings. In my course, the first exercise in round 1 is to actually draw your relationship with the top 6 emotions that we feel.
I love that. Yay. Fantastic.
Because through drawing, we liberate.
What do people tend to draw? What are the images that you tend to see when people do that?
There's a lot of stick figures.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
When you're trying to process what your relationship is with those big feelings, I'd probably only go to stick figures as well.
The top 6, happiness, sadness, disgust, trust, love. So, there's a lot of love hearts around the love emotions, but it's more around connecting with how you feel right now. And drawing it liberates us of the emotion, and it allows us just to connect with how we're feeling without fear, without judgment, in complete safety, because the only one that can judge us harshly is ourselves. And by drawing it without having to verbalize it or process it through words, through journaling, it literally connects us in that moment and gives us a moment of perspective, like, whoa, I'm feeling that way. Whew, that's intense.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's okay, because it's actually okay not to be feeling okay. Yeah, and then you get to choose how you respond to that.
I think that is more relevant than when it comes to the online world. I think everything that you're saying is about self-regulation, teaching ourselves how we can stop for a minute, even if we're feeling angry or triggered by different situations. And I really think that's the epitome of digital resilience. It's not the bad things aren't going to happen. It's about teaching ourselves the skills and knowledge to make sure we can overcome those challenges. And again, like, thrive, have a great time, utilize the online world for all of its amazing benefits, of which there are many, but certainly trying to bring all of those skills that we have in our physical worlds into our digital ones.
Exactly. Breathing, drawing, connecting with friends, not suffering in silence, but, crying with a mate.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Having your top 5, your safe people.
Yes. Find your dream team. And then it's being really clear around your boundaries, around your utilization of social media, what messages you're sharing, like, who are these images or these messages for, and what is it that you want them to do with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then as a person who's responding to what they see, instead of being the dream thief and the person who loves to, pass judgment and dispersions and be really mean, you can stop and actually be the cheerleader.
Absolutely.
And if there's something that triggers you and you want to, like, just jump on and be that troll, you can literally stop and go, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? and we stop and ask ourselves that question, well, probably if we don't answer all three of those with a yes, then it's not worth mentioning anything. It's not worth saying anything, because then you're just getting sucked into the vortex now.
Absolutely. And we've got to ask ourselves, you know, when does that sort of barrier of it being healthy discourse become toxic and counterproductive to anybody involved in that situation? And I think, you know, it takes practice. It takes a lot of presence of mind to be able to recognize that in the moment as well. We all get upset. We all want to defend ourselves.
Of course.
But ultimately, sometimes it's also about understanding when somebody's throwing us a bit of rope and hoping that we catch it and, you know, keep pulling on it and keep having that argument.
Yeah, here's your hook, bite on it.
Exactly.
Let me hook you in.
Let me hook you in. I'm just going to bring you in, reel you in. So, you know.
And then I'll tag you and release you.
Exactly. And then maybe reel you back. I'll just go back to that thread and start again. So I think it's understanding the dynamics as well sometimes, isn't it, with these sorts of situations?
Yes, and as you said, it does take an element of maturity and understanding of when you're triggered, and then recognizing why you're triggered, how you're triggered, and how you're going to respond to that trigger. So what are you going to do next? And
absolutely.
And for me, I know I'm triggered either when I'm in a self-loathing state, a self-doubting state, a self-criticizing state, or I'm craving shit that I know isn't very good for me. And if I'm numbingly scrolling or eating foods that I know doesn't nourish my soul, or saying things that have a really negative connotation to it, I know I'm triggered. I know that's not the person that I want to be, nor is it a good version of me. I'm better off just turning off and doing something that lights me up. Go for a surf, go for a walk, go hug a dog, whatever it takes to get me back into that happy place.
Get back into nature, number one rule of all of this sort of stuff, right?
Yes.
Hey, Layne, I'm going to ask you one more thing, one key takeaway, and I think we've probably already nailed it all, but if you had one thing that you think needs to be done to reduce the impact of online abuse on women and girls, what would it be? What would be that one thing that can be done, whether that be by organizations or within? What would you suggest?
That is really challenging to answer, because if we had the answer to that, that'd be the $1 million question right there. The first thing that comes to mind is around about the sexualization of women on social media, and the whole context around body image and just images in general. I think from my personal point of view, when it comes to engaging with social media, you can't really avoid the negativity. You can't avoid all of that shit that comes at you. But what you can be is really intentional about what you share and why you share it. And from my perspective, I don't know if I'm answering the question, but my whole my relationship with social media is about being a light of positivity. It's about sharing messages, about having fun. It's not just about, look at me, look at where I am. It's about promoting happiness and connection and all the things that we crave as human beings. I feel that if we could, I would just love everyone to stop judging everybody. That's just a pipe dream.
Totally.
I feel that, where I'm coming from is I want everyone that is on social media to take and accept responsibility and accountability for what they share. And it needs to be shared from a place of positive intent, not validation, external validation or reassurance, because that's a hiding to nothing.
What a great piece of advice to wrap it up. I think that's so true. I really like taking accountability and responsibility. If each of us does that, if we each play our bit, take our moment, it really does create that movement. To quote our good friend Luke Cook, Cookie Cup of TV, that's what he's going to be doing and talking about over the next couple of months. So
epic.
An amazing chat, Layne. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.